This is my review for The Amazing Bulk. So, The Amazing Bulk came out in 2012, and it is a strange and questionable movie that appears to have, been like a direct to video release. Upon watching the entire movie, I can see why it never came to theaters, as far as I'm sure. The idea of the movie is basically a spoof of The Incredible Hulk with lots of cheese and really, and I mean really, bad graphics. The entire movie seems to have been made with free or mostly free assets, many of which seem to be completely out of place in the film. Then again, I had a hard time understanding what was supposed to really be happening in the first place. So, the movie starts out with a scene in the middle of a city at night with what appear to be like 3D graphics. It looks something like from an early 3D studio from the 90s. Granted, keep in mind, this came out in 2012. Uh, but it had like this 3D form before much of the 3D tech was really like solidified. It was just really out of date looking, first of all. Uh, Instead of being entirely in 3D, though, or computer graphics, we see actual people walking in front of a green screen for the entire film. This is a strange, but actually, in my opinion, hilarious choice. Because, and in some ways, I know this sounds crazy, in some ways, I found this to be pretty clever. I don't think I've ever seen a movie use a green screen in this way, but I guess there's a reason for that, right? Strangely, I give the director props though for doing this. I've just never seen anyone do that ever. The beginning starts out with a woman who I guess we're supposed to assume is an escort walking alone at night. She stops in an alleyway, and as she tries to light a cigarette, she gets mugged and then killed. A big purple freak shows up who obviously is supposed to be the bulk, and he yells, I guess, at the mugger, and the mugger shoots the freak, the bulk, and then something happens and the mugger dies. The the purple freak, the amazing bulk, runs away, and that's it, and it's not even explained. The story then goes on to the main character, Hank, who works in a lab that mysteriously looks like a high school science lab, by the way. And he has an assistant whose name is Sam. And the two try working on some experiment with rats, but it never pans out. It's supposed to be like some government funded experiment, and they're trying to like change the color, but this isn't really explained. Not in the beginning, I believe. The rats, for whatever reason, never do what they're supposed to and they just explode every time. One day, Hank's girlfriend comes by and they run around and frolic during the lunch hour. And Hank plans to propose to Hannah, the girlfriend, but he wants to get her father's blessing first. Later, Hank goes to Hannah's house where she lives with her father, who is a general in the army, which is like, it's always that trope, right? So the house is also CG green screen. It's also a green screen. When Hank asks the general for his blessing, he gets all angry and basically Hank ends up leaving. He doesn't propose. Later, Hank and Hannah go on a date alone to like a carnival, and you see them riding on a roller coaster, which in a strange way, I thought that the actors did a pretty good job because, of course, this was green screen. And so they had to make it look like they were on, the roller coaster. And so that takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. But even still, like the whole green screen thing just started looking stupider and stupider in what was already a stupid looking movie. Yeah, I really wondered if the actors felt silly while making the movie, because it's like, oh my God, there's nothing here and I have to act, every single fucking thing. It just gets worse as the movie goes on. So after the carnival, the couple go home, but they take the subway and they get mugged. The mugger takes Hannah's earrings, and then he also takes the ring that Hank was going to use to propose to Hannah. Stupidly, Hank tries to fight the mugger and he gets knocked to the floor. Hannah gets mad. The mugger leaves. Hannah gets mad and she's like, "Why did you do that? You could have gotten killed." Which is fair because in real life he could have actually gotten shot and killed. It was like Chicago or some shit. But then after the subway, they get mugged in the subway. We see them driving home. So it makes no sense to me because I'm like, I thought they were on the subway. Why are they driving now? So after this, Hank drops off Hannah and he goes back to the lab. I had to close the curtain because it was so bright I couldn't even see my screen. So, um, anyway, so back to the review. Finally, we could just get back to this review. So at the lab that night, Hank manages to finally create a serum that works, and he uses it on a plant and he turns it purple. Okay. He then uses the serum on himself and becomes the Amazing Bulk. The beginning part of the movie happens again, which was pretty confusing because they didn't bother to tell us that the opening scene was technically like a prologue, so we just kind of figured that out for ourselves. I was like, okay. And so this opening scene happens again, and we see, how the Bulk fights the mugger and the mugger dies, I guess. And the mugger at the beginning of the film is this guy that took the engagement ring a couple of scenes ago. So the same thing happens, and then the next day, Hank wakes up in his room with purple goo on his tank top, and for whatever reason, he magically has like a tribal tattoo on his arm, and this is never addressed at all. The cops show up to his house and give him his wallet back, but the male cop, because it was a male and female cop, is suspicious of Hank. They follow him and he goes back to the crime scene. And then a huge fight happens because the cops are like, "We knew you killed him." They thought he killed the mugger, which I guess he did, but whatever. And so this huge fight happens. Hank turns into the Bulk. And while terrorizing the city, the Bulk flips a car and it smashes the female cop, killing her. So Hank turns back into a human and he's caught, butt ass naked, and taken to jail. It's as simple as that. Meanwhile, there are various scenes in the film, somewhere elsewhere, about a quirky couple named Dr. and I guess just Mrs. Kontlove. Supposed to be like German. So it was something similar to like the Joker and Harley Quinn. The couple are kind of like gross to look at and just weird, in my opinion. They like to blow up stuff. It was like some sort of weird sexual arousal kink to send off missiles and blow up shit. And it seems that the doctor seems to have erectile dysfunction. Okay. Back to Hank, though. He's taken by the general to a top secret facility, which has a sign depicting how top secret it was. Obviously that was for comedy. I found that funny. And we see the silly scene where Hank is being wheeled down a hall in a wheelchair. These scenes in the movie where a character is supposed to be running or walking are so silly because they're in front of a green screen the entire movie, the entire film. So they're just walking in place, running in place, while the scene moves in the background. It's so stupid. It just looks so bad. It's cheesy. And the running in place reminds me of, I don't know why, but like when you would be in theater or something like that back in like 8th grade. It just reminded me of 8th grade theater. So, of course, in the secret lab, the general has Hank experimented on, and I noticed that the costume the general wore wasn't showing the right rank on it. The general tells Hank that he can marry Hannah if he kills Dr. Kontlove because the doctor had been blowing up important landmarks around the world. And this is the very end of the film, like the last 10 minutes. And so it's like, oh, okay, the last 10 minutes, it's finally revealed this German guy is, I guess, the main villain. Not that it's ever really established. So Hank goes to the lair of Kontlove, which is just this really silly, laughable fairy tale looking castle with the green screen effect. As the Bulk, he pretty much just steps on everybody and he the cronies and Kontlove and Kontlove's wife, and he leaves the castle. And then the general turns out to be evil, and he tries to bomb Hank. So here's where the last like 5 fucking minute montage of the movie starts, where Hank turns back into the Bulk, and then he pulls this Forrest Gump ass scene, and he just runs long distance around what seems to be the whole world, avoiding the general's bombs. And I found it funny that Hannah's father was an army general, and yet there was an Air Force bomber trying to destroy Hank. The movie seemed to use every single free 3D asset that they had to pad out time for this end sequence, especially. I was in complete awe at just how it just kept going and going. Like, the Duracell bunny, right? It keeps going and going and going. Bulk just ran forever. There were just random things thrown into this movie. I mean, various 3D models that were walking and crap. I mean, one of the scenes was just like, where did they get this from? Where did they get that from? And I know a lot of people won't understand what I mean when I say this, but in many ways, this movie is very, very Gongo. If you know about Grey Sphinx and Gongo, this is very, very Gongo. I would nearly expect this to be on Adult Swim in the middle of the night, especially when I was in college, honestly. This is definitely one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I know that I say that a lot, but this is seriously one of the worst ones. I could not stop noticing how much that the actor who played Hank would just constantly scowl. He just constantly was like, and I'm like, all this dude looks like he's constantly mid shit. I know that's like really gross, but he looks like he's halfway through and he's sweating through a constipated shit. I mean, was he supposed to scowl that much? Or was that like the actor, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this film? What was up? What was up with that? So, I'll have to say, if you like good movies, this is not for you. This is not a movie for people that like to watch good stuff. But if you enjoy trash, I recommend checking it out. It's the type of movie that's so bad, you feel like you have to show it to your friends, in a way. So, I don't give this any stars, but I give it 3 out of 5 slimes. 3 slimes. 3.